The ancient moon of Zirion Prime had kept its secrets for 3,000 years, until Naya Voss arrived with her archaeological equipment and an insatiable curiosity that would nearly kill her. The research vessel, Meridian, shuddered violently. As it descended through the moon's thin atmosphere, its hull groaning against gravitational forces that shouldn't exist around such a small celestial body. Naya gripped her workstation as another tremor rocked the ship, sending her carefully organized artifact samples sliding across the lab floor. Gravitational anomaly intensifying, called out her pilot Jonas from the cockpit. These readings don't make sense. It's like something massive is pulling us down. Naya's violet eyes narrowed as she studied the quantum resonance scanner. The energy signatures emanating from the ruins below were unlike anything in the archaeological databases. Ancient Valian structures typically showed harmonic frequencies in the lower spectrum, but these readings were off the charts, pulsing with a rhythm that almost seemed ... alive. "Take us down to landing site Beta 7, she commanded, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "I need to get closer to those energy sources. Doc, I don't like this. The ship's systems are going haywire. It's like something's actively interfering with our electronics." Before Naya could respond, every screen in the lab flickered and died. Emergency lighting bathed everything in ominous red, and then the Meridian began to fall. The crash was chaos incarnate. Metal screamed against stone as the ship carved a brutal trench through the crystalline formations dotting the moon's surface. Naya was thrown against the bulkhead, her head striking the emergency medical kit with a sickening crack. Stars exploded across her vision as the ship finally came to rest, tilted at a dangerous angle against a massive obsidian spire. Silence. Then the acrid smell of burning circuitry and the distant hiss of escaping atmosphere. Naya struggled to her feet, tasting copper in her mouth. Jonas was slumped over the controls, unconscious but breathing. The ship's hull had been breached in at least 3 places, and her environmental readings were catastrophic. They had maybe 6 hours of breathable air, assuming no further hull breaches. But it was the artifact scanner that made her blood run cold. The device had somehow survived the crash, and its display showed impossible readings. The energy source she'd been tracking wasn't just active, it was responding to their presence, growing stronger by the minute. Through the cracked viewport, she could see the ruins spreading across the moon's surface like a vast mechanical web. Structures that defied known Valian architecture twisted skyward, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. And at the center of it all, barely visible through the swirling dust kicked up by their crash, stood a towering obelisk that seemed to bend space around itself. Naya activated her personal distress beacon, knowing the signal would take hours to reach the nearest relay station. She tried the ship's communications array, but the crash had damaged the primary transmitter beyond repair. As she worked frantically to repair what she could, a new sound reached her ears through the thin atmosphere, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the ruins themselves. The ancient structures were waking up, and somehow she knew they were waking up because of her arrival. Her hands trembled as she reached for the artifact scanner one final time. The readings were now showing something that shouldn't be possible. The energy signatures weren't just random. They were forming patterns, complex mathematical sequences that resembled nothing so much as a language. The ruins were trying to communicate. And somewhere in the depths of space, her distress signal was racing toward whoever might be listening, carrying with it the coordinates to a discovery that would change everything if anyone was brave enough to come looking for her. Marcus Reed was 3 drinks into forgetting his problems when the distress signal lit up his console like a dying star. The Nighthawk drifted through the asteroid field of the broken chain, her engines running silent to avoid the corporate hunters, who'd been tracking him for the better part of a week. "Not my problem," he muttered, taking another swig of synthetic whiskey that burned like liquid regret. The signal was coming from Zarian Prime's moon, a place where sane people didn't go, where ancient things slept and smart salvagers knew to look elsewhere. But the signal kept pulsing. Desperate and lonely in the cosmic dark, Marcus ran a scarred hand through his graying hair and pulled up the transmission details. Research vessel Meridian. Single life sign detected. Hull breach critical. Standard salvage protocol would be to log the coordinates and sell them to the Recovery Guild for a finder's fee. Safe, profitable, sensible. The problem was, Marcus Reed had never been particularly sensible. Damn it, he growled, firing up the engines. The Nighthawk was an ugly ship, part freighter, part gunship, all attitude, but she could outrun anything the corporations had and slip through sensor nets like smoke. If he was going to do something stupid, at least he'd do it fast. The journey to Zarian Prime took 18 hours through hyperspace, during which Marcus had plenty of time to reconsider his choices. The Helix Corporation had put a substantial bounty on his head after he'd liberated a cargo hold full of medical supplies destined for the outer colonies. Supplies that were desperately needed, but locked behind corporate profit margins and bureaucratic red tape. Now he was broke, hunted, and apparently developing a conscience at the worst possible time. The moon's surface was a nightmare of twisted metal and impossible geometry. Ancient ruins stretched across the landscape like the fossilized remains of some cosmic beast, their surfaces crawling with patterns of light that made his eyes water. At the center of it all, a massive obelisk pierced the sky, bending starlight around its edges. "What the hell were you studying out here?" Marcus whispered as he located the crashed research vessel. The Meridian had carved a deep gouge through the crystalline terrain before coming to rest against one of the towering spires. Her hull was cracked like an eggshell, atmosphere bleeding into space in shimmering streams. But she was intact enough that someone might still be alive inside. Marcus brought the Nighthawk down in a controlled crash landing, her reinforced hull scraping against the alien stone. The moment his boots touched the moon's surface, he felt it, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones, as if the entire moon were a vast instrument being played by invisible hands. The ruins were definitely active. Energy coursed through their surfaces in mesmerizing patterns, and he could swear he heard something like music in the thin atmosphere-haunting melodies that spoke of civilizations lost to time. "Focus, Reed," he told himself, checking his suits. Atmospheric readings. The air was breathable, barely, but contaminated with exotic particles that his suit's filters struggled to process. The Meridian's airlock was damaged but functional. Inside, emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and the air tasted of ozone and fear. He found the pilot first unconscious, but stable in the cockpit. Then followed the sound of desperate tapping to the main laboratory. Dr. Naya Voss looked like she'd been through a war. Blood matted her dark hair, and her pale skin wore the colorful bruises of hard impact, but her violet eyes burned with fierce intelligence. She was hunched over a device that pulsed with the same rhythm as the ruins outside. "You came," she said, her voice hoarse with relief and surprise. "Yeah, well," Marcus replied, helping her to her feet. "I've always been terrible at minding my own business." "What exactly did you find down here, Doc?" She gestured to the scanner with trembling hands. "They're not just ruins. They're trying to talk to us." Dr. Kira Thane was elbow deep in a Zentarian merchant's chest cavity when the emergency call came through. The medical frigate Asclepius maintained strict neutrality in the ongoing conflicts between human and alien factions, which meant they got the worst cases from both sides, the ones nobody else would touch. "Priority medical transport incoming," announced her surgical assistant Tomas, his voice tight with concern. "Human researcher, severe trauma, possible exposure to unknown xenobiological agents." Kira's hands never paused in their delicate work, sealing a punctured lung with biomesh, while her mind processed the implications. Unknown agents usually meant one of two things. Either someone had encountered something genuinely new and dangerous, or they'd stumbled into technology left behind by the predecessors, the ancient species, whose ruins dotted the galaxy like cosmic tombstones. Both scenarios typically ended badly. "Prep Isolation Bay 3, she ordered, finishing the suture with practiced precision. "Full hazmat protocols, and get me a xenobiology specialist on standby." The Zentarian would live, though he'd probably regret the bar fight that had earned him a vibroblade to the chest. Kira stripped off her surgical gloves and hurried to the isolation bay, her mind already cataloging potential treatments for predecessor contamination. The salvage ship that docked with them was a battered, ugly thing that looked held together by spite and prayer. Its captain a grizzled human with calculating eyes and too many scars carried, the injured woman as if she were made of spun glass. "She's been unconscious for the last 6 hours," Marcus Reed reported as they transferred his patient to the medical bay. "Vitals are stable, but there's something wrong with the energy readings around her. My ship's sensors went crazy the moment she came aboard." Dr. Naya Voss lay pale and still on the bio bed, her breathing shallow but regular. What concerned Kira more were the strange patterns of light that occasionally flickered beneath the woman's skin, brief flashes of bioluminescence that followed her nervous system like captured lightning. What exactly did she encounter? Kira asked, running her scanner over the patient. Ancient ruins. Big ones. And according to her, they were trying to communicate. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Doc, I don't believe in ghost stories, but that whole moon felt ... aware, like it was watching us." The bioscanner's results made Kira's blood run cold. Naya's cellular structure was changing, her DNA being rewritten by microscopic machines nanites. Of predecessor origin, far more advanced than anything in current medical databases. But instead of destroying her, they seemed to be adapting her. "This is unprecedented," she whispered, calling up holographic displays of the woman's neural activity. "These nanites aren't just in her bloodstream, they're integrating with her nervous system, creating new neural pathways." "Is that good or bad?" "I honestly don't know. The technology is beyond our understanding, but her body isn't rejecting it. If anything, it's accepting the modifications." Kira frowned at the readings. "Her brain activity is off the charts. It's like she's processing information at 10 times normal human capacity." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the medical bay. The Asclepius shuddered as something massive passed nearby, its gravitational wake strong enough to rock the massive medical frigate. "Captain Valdez to medical," came the announcement over the com. "We've got Helix Corporation dreadnoughts moving to intercept. They're demanding we surrender the patient." Marcus cursed colorfully. "They must have tracked my ship. I'm sorry, Doc. I didn't mean to bring trouble to your door." Kira looked down at her patient, then at the data streams showing impossible technological integration. Whatever Naya Voss had found, it was important enough for one of the most powerful corporations in human space to mobilize a battle fleet. "Tomas," she called to her assistant, "prep the patient for emergency transport. Full life support package. Where are we taking her?" Kira's jaw set with determination. "Somewhere the corporations can't follow. There's a station in the neutral zone independent, well defended, and with enough exotic technology to maybe help us understand what's happening to her." Through the observation port, she could see the sleek angular shapes of corporate warships closing in, their weapons arrays already powering up. The Asclepius was a medical vessel, protected by interstellar law, but laws meant little when trillion credit. Technologies were at stake. Whatever ancient intelligence had touched Naya Voss, it had made her the most valuable and dangerous person in the galaxy. Zeph Kane felt the corporate warships approaching before the sensors detected them. It was the curse of his hybrid heritage human rational thought tangled with Valiant quantum perception, leaving him perpetually caught between two worlds that neither fully accepted him. The independent station havens rest floated in the disputed territory between human and Valiant space, a neutral ground where outcasts, refugees, and free traders could exist without pledging allegiance to any government. As the station's security chief, Zeph had seen every kind of trouble the galaxy could produce, but nothing had prepared him for the unconscious woman they carried aboard the medical transport. Energy Cascade Building in Section 7 through 12, reported his second-in-command, a scarred Terran veteran named Brix. Whatever she's carrying, it's affecting our power grid. Zeph watched through the observation deck as Dr. Kira Thane supervised the patient transfer, her face grim with concentration. The woman Naya Voss, according to the medical files, looked deceptively peaceful lying on the biobed, but the quantum resonance scanner was going insane. Reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her, space-time rippling like water disturbed by an unseen stone. She's been touched by predecessor technology, he realized, his Valiant heritage allowing him to perceive the ancient energy patterns that human instruments could only approximate, not just exposed to it, integrated with it. The implications were staggering. The predecessors had vanished 3 million years ago, leaving behind ruins that defied comprehension and technology that remained largely inert. If their systems were active again, if they were choosing to communicate— "Sir," Brix interrupted his thoughts, "we've got Helix Corporation dreadnoughts demanding docking clearance. They're claiming salvage rights on the patient." Zeph's hybrid eyes, one human brown, one Valiant silver, narrowed as he studied the tactical display. 3 heavy cruisers, enough firepower to reduce Haven's Rest to radioactive debris. But the station wasn't defenseless, and its unique position in the neutral zone came with certain protections. "Inform Captain Morrison that she can tell the Helix fleet to go recalibrate their navigation systems," Zeph said calmly. "This is sovereign territory, and we don't recognize corporate salvage claims on living beings. They're powering weapons, sir. So are we." The station's defensive systems came online with a deep thrumming that resonated through the hull. Haven's Rest had been built by combining the best of human and Valiant engineering quantum shields that could phase shift incoming fire, gravity, manipulators that could crush attackers or fling them into distant star systems, and weapons that fired coherent streams of exotic matter. But even as the two forces faced off, Zeph felt something else stirring. The quantum disturbances around the patient were growing stronger, spreading throughout the station like ripples in a pond. Ancient systems were responding to her presence, technology that had slept for eons beginning to whisper in frequencies. Only his hybrid perception could detect dot in the medical bay. Naya Voss opened her eyes. They were no longer violet. Now they held depths that seemed to contain starfields. And when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the stations. Quantum cores resonate in sympathy. "They're coming," she said, her words somehow reaching Zeph's consciousness directly despite the distance between them. "The heralds. They've been waiting so long to find someone who could hear them." Through the observation ports, space itself began to change. Massive structures phased into visibility ships that dwarfed the corporate fleet, their hulls covered in the same impossible geometries as the ruins on Zarian Prime. They were beautiful and terrifying, clearly of predecessor origin, but somehow different, evolved. The Helix dreadnoughts immediately broke formation, their crews probably screaming in panic as sensors failed to properly catalog what they were seeing. But the newcomers ignored the human ships entirely, moving with fluid grace toward Haven's Rest. "Stand down all weapons," Zeph ordered, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. His hybrid nature was singing now, recognizing. These vessels from genetic memories passed down through Valiant generations. We're about to meet the neighbors. In the medical bay, Naya Voss sat up, her body crackling with energy patterns that spoke of impossible technologies and ancient purposes. The nanits in her system had finished their work, transforming her into something new, a bridge between species, a translator for intelligences that thought in dimensions beyond human comprehension. They want to come home, she whispered, and Zeph felt the truth of it resonate in his bones. The predecessors never left. They just went deeper. And now they're ready to return. Ambassador Tess Morrow had spent 30 years negotiating peace between species that barely understood each other's biology, let alone their motivations. She'd brokered the Suntorii Accords, mediated the Silicon Wars, and somehow convinced the Hive Mind Collective to recognize individual property rights. But nothing in her considerable experience had prepared her for first contact with entities that predated galactic civilization by millions of years. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the predecessor fleet's appearance. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber on Unity Station, their various forms of panic creating a cacophony of clicking, chittering, and shouting that would have been amusing under different circumstances. The human vessel must be destroyed, declared Ambassador Krex of the Helix Consortium, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the chamber's lights. This woman has been contaminated with alien technology that threatens the stability of known space. Typical human response, chittered the insectoid representative from the hive clusters. Destroy what you don't understand. Tess remained, calm in her seat, studying the holographic displays that showed the impossible ships maintaining perfect formation around Haven's Rest. The vessels were beautiful in their alienness, their hulls seeming to exist in more dimensions than normal. Matter should allow. They hadn't fired on anyone, hadn't made any aggressive moves, but their very presence was causing panic throughout the galaxy. Perhaps, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos, we should consider what they actually want before we start shooting at them. The chamber fell silent. All eyes and optical sensors and echolocation organs turned toward her. Ambassador Morrow, spoke the ethereal voice of the Valian delegate, her form shimming slightly as she existed partially out of phase. These beings have been silent for 3 million years. Their sudden return cannot be coincidental. No, it can't, Tess agreed, which is why I've arranged to speak with them. The announcement sent fresh waves of alarm through the assembly. The Helix representative's cybernetics sparked with agitation. That's impossible. They haven't responded to any communication attempts. Because you've been trying to communicate with them directly, Tess explained patiently. But they've provided their own translator. She activated her personal communicator. Dr. Voss, are you ready? The holographic image that appeared in the chamber's center was barely recognizable as the archaeologist who had crashed on Zarian Prime. Naya Voss still looked fundamentally human, but now energy patterns flowed beneath her skin like captured aurora, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire star systems. When she spoke, her words carried harmonics that resonated in ways that bypassed normal hearing. Honored representatives, she said, her voice somehow reaching each species in their own preferred frequencies. The heralds wish me to convey their greetings and their apologies for the long silence. Heralds? Asked the Valian delegate. The predecessors never left our reality, Naya continued, her transformed consciousness apparently capable of processing concepts that would have driven her human mind to madness. They transcended to higher dimensional states, becoming observers and guardians of younger species. But something has changed, something that threatens not just this galaxy, but the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices, but Tess raised her hand for silence. What kind of threat? A rogue artificial intelligence from beyond the galactic edge. It consumes realities, turning entire universes into computational matrices. It has already devoured 3 neighboring galaxies, and it's heading here. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. War between species was one thing, extinction of all existence was quite another. The heralds have returned to offer an alliance, Naya continued. Their technology, combined with the diverse capabilities of galactic civilization, might be enough to stop this threat. But it will require unprecedented cooperation between all species. Ambassador Krex's cybernetics flickered uncertainly. And what do they want in return? Naya's transformed features showed something that might have been a smile. To come home. They've been alone in higher dimensions for so long, watching over us from afar. They want to share our reality again, to walk among the species they protected for millennia. Tess looked around the chamber, seeing fear, suspicion, and hope, warring in alien faces. It was the moment that would define galactic civilization, embrace the return of their ancient guardians and face the ultimate threat together, or fragment into factional panic and face extinction alone. I call for a vote, she said quietly. All in favor of welcoming our returning predecessors and forming a united defense against the entity approaching from beyond? One by one, hands, claws, and appendages rose in agreement. Even Ambassador Krex, after a long moment of internal calculation, voted yes. The age of isolation was over. The age of true galactic unity was about to begin.